And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week.
And there's so much to talk about this morning that I'm not sure we can fit it into exactly 60 seconds, so maybe for the first time we'll go over. But on a serious note, we generally end this best 60-ish seconds with the memorials, but this week, with the passing of Rush Limbaugh, I want to begin by just mentioning one of America's great broadcasters and a conservative giant, who took his talk radio program and made it into the most important medium for conservatives for many, many years. In the closing days of the 1980s, Ronald Reagan did away with the so-called fairness doctrine, which opened up the opportunity for conservatives to have a true voice in the medium. And Rush Limbaugh grabbed a hold of it. He wasn't a policy wonk or expert, and he certainly wasn't a politician, but he was somebody who could communicate, a truly amazing communicator who took the message of free markets and freedom to the American people in ways never before heard. And so he had command of the field for so many years and did so much good. And of course, the left screamed blue bloody murder. And in the days after his passing, some of the comments that had been made by the leftists in this country can only be described as pure evil. To celebrate the death of anyone is, in my judgment, just plain flat out hideous. But to do it in the ways that they did about Rush Limbaugh is even more so. But it kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? Here was a man who got the Presidential Medal of Freedom, so thankfully, from Donald Trump in his last State of the Union message, and who did so much for so many years. May he rest in peace, and may perpetual light shine upon Rush H. Limbaugh. And of course, in the days just prior to Rush Limbaugh's passing, the United States Senate acquitted Donald J. Trump in the impeachment trial 2.0. And was there any great surprise there? It was a known outcome from the very beginning, and so we have to again ask the question, and I'll do it, I hope, for the last time. Did the Democrats in Congress who rushed this thing through truly believe that it was in the best interests of the country? Or was this simply another opportunity for them to try to score temporary, cheap political points? We'll just leave it there. And Joe Biden is now saying that he won't even go along with congressional demands for a $50,000 per student debt forgiveness program on student loans. There's a whole lot of reasons why that's bad policy, and even the Biden administration has figured that out. But I have a little modest proposal. How about if we get these giant colleges and universities, who frankly are part of the problem of what's going on in our culture today with the nonsense that they're spewing out for students, to give back just a portion, a tiny part of their reserves, especially their giant endowments. If they gave up just 1%, and incidentally they invest those endowment funds expecting a return rate of around 7% a year, so they're not giving up very much, and particularly with the Trump economy, they were getting 8, 10, 12 points per year. They gave back 1%. Think of what that would do. Harvard University alone, with I think something like a $40 billion endowment, that's $400 million a year, if you think about it, to go towards debt forgiveness for the students that had to pay exorbitant rates for the piece of paper they received from higher education. Just a thought for your contemplation. And this week, NASA landed a craft on Mars, no little green men scampering away that we could see, a 300 million mile voyage. And with the landing, we find out that China, surprise, surprise, is right behind. It cost the taxpayers about $3.5 billion, as I understand, which, frankly, when we're talking about $2 trillion COVID relief packages, is chump change. But the space race is important to the United States for a whole lot of reasons. And the excitement that surrounded the landing on Mars really is, I think, good news for the country. And in the markets this week, up again slightly, but we had two important things to note based upon what we've been talking about for the last few weeks. One, Bitcoin at 50,000. I still can't quite understand all that, but there it sits. And we had this week the GameStop hearings in Congress, which revealed to me anyway the fact that the little investor, the small investors like you and me, are still getting it in the throat from the truly big guys on Wall Street. And what can be done about that is going to be very, very interesting to see discussed over the course of the next few weeks. And we can't fail to mention the scandal unfolding in New York over Governor Cuomo and his handling of the COVID crisis there, taking folks out of hospitals, putting them into nursing homes to die, and then, much more significantly, covering up his actions because he didn't want the truth to be revealed. Watch that one closely, because in my home state of Pennsylvania, we have very similar situations where the governor of Pennsylvania did the same thing, but his Secretary of Health removed her mother from one of those assisted living facilities before the order took place. So I believe there's going to be a lot of transparency called for in a lot of different states. Let's see how these Democrat governors react, while at the same time you're seeing in California a recall petition for the governor there over many of the same issues. It really is amazing. They don't have Donald Trump to blame anymore. Now the focus is on them. Let's see what happens. And finally, I hope it's been clear to all that I am pro-energy. Whether it's fossil fuel energy, renewables, or nuclear, I'm for American energy as a way of not being dependent upon foreign powers, particularly those that hate us, for our energy supply. But what we saw in Texas this week was very interesting, where the deep freeze there laid open the fact that renewables are not as reliable as some might think, and that the less we use fossil fuels, the more we need them. So let's keep going with the development, safe and effective, of natural gas in particular, but of other fossil fuels by extension, while we still look for renewables. But maybe a less significant focus on bailing them out with subsidies might be the right way to go. Finally, pitchers and catchers reported this week. Can the robins of spring be far behind before the boys of summer take over? Because for now, that is the best 60-ish seconds of your week.